Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something that honestly makes me a little bit nervous.
Oh, how so?
Well, usually when we sit down here, we have a very clear lane. We're
Hmm.
doing history or tech or psychology. We have facts, dates, studies. It's solid ground.
And today you feel like the ground is shifting a bit.
I feel like the ground is dissolving because today we are looking at a collision. And I don't use that word lightly. We're looking at a collision between two worlds that most people, myself included, if I'm being honest, keep in entirely different mental boxes.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about theoretical physics and lyrical poetry.
Or, as our subject today might put it, the collision between the logos and the mitos, the logic and the dream.
Exactly. And just to be super clear for everyone listening, we are not talking about a poet who decided to write a cute rhyme about a rainbow. This isn't, the rose is red, the violet is blue, photosynthesis makes sugar for you.
No, definitely not that.
We are talking about high-level, rigorous, mathematical physics neutron stars, quantum mechanics, event horizons, the decay of the Z boson being deconstructed and rebuilt as stanzas. We are exploring the works of Burak Kuskun.
It is a fascinating territory. I mean, Kuskind is a figure who really defies the standard categorization we rely on.
He really is.
He's a physicist by training. He's worked on neutron stars, magnetars, exotic nuclei. He's been at KTH in Sweden, the University of Bonn in Germany. So, he knows the math better than 99.9% of the population.
He has the credentials.
He does. But he is also this deeply speculative, almost mystical writer who operates right at the border.
And the main sources we're unpacking today are his book Science and Poetry, which came out in 2022, and the forthcoming sequel, which has a title that I frankly just enjoy saying out loud.
That's a great title.
Magnetic Monopole Dreams in Blue Anatolian Nights.
It is a mouthful, but it sets the tone perfectly, doesn't it?
It really does. But here's where my skepticism starts pinging. And I want to put this on the table right away. We spent the last, 400 years, basically since Galileo and Newton, working really, really hard to separate science and poetry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Science is objective.
Yep.
It's rigorous. It's cold, hard facts.
Mm-hmm.
Poetry is subjective,
Mm-hmm.
emotional. It's fuzzy. If Kuskind is trying to blur that line again, isn't he risking making the science, bad? Or making the poetry just a gimmick?
That is the instinctive reaction. And I think that's exactly the reaction Kuskind is trying to provoke. It's a valid fear. You don't want your bridge engineer writing haikus about the stress load.
No.
You want them to calculate the stress load.
Exactly. I want the math to work. I don't need the steel beam to have an existential crisis.
Fair enough. But let's look at why we separated them. We stripped away the narrative, the mitos, to get to the mechanic, the logos. We stopped explaining lightning as Zeus is angry and started explaining it as electron discharge.
And that was necessary for progress.
It was absolutely necessary. But Kuskund's argument, and this is really the core mission of his work, is that we stripped away too much. We threw the baby out with the bathwater.
What did we lose? I mean, we got antibiotics and iPhones. I feel like we came out ahead in that deal.
We got the technology, yes.
Yeah.
But Kuskind argues in his manifesto on academic rebellion that by removing the feeling of discovery, the aesthetic weight of the universe, we've turned science into just data entry.
Data entry. Wow.
He talks about this invisible torture in academia. If you treat the universe as just a machine, eventually you become just a mechanic. And mechanics don't dream.
Mechanics don't dream. That's interesting. So he's saying that the Zeus part, the awe, the terror, the wonder, was actually serving a function, that it provided the motivation to look at the lightning in the first place.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He isn't saying we should abandon the scientific method. He's not saying let's go back to sacrificing goats to get a good harvest.
Right. Okay. Good to clarify.
He's saying we need to reintegrate the human observer, the wondering observer, back into the equation. I mean, think about the giants of physics. Heisenberg, Schrödinger, Bohr, even Newton. When they were making their discoveries, they weren't just plugging numbers into a spreadsheet.
No, they were deeply philosophical.
They were. They were reading the Vedas. They were arguing about the nature of reality. They were obsessed with the why, not just the how. They understood that physics is a language we use to talk to the universe.
And like any language, if you only use it for technical manuals, it dies.
It dies. It becomes sterile. It needs poetry to express the inexpressible. Kuskind is arguing that an equation isn't just a tool, it's a stanza. It has a rhythm, it has a structure, it has an inherent beauty. And if you ignore that beauty, you're actually a worse physicist. You're blinded by dogma, as he puts it.
That is a heavy accusation to throw at your colleagues. blinded by dogma.
Hmm.
Because usually scientists think of themselves as the ones fighting dogma.
He hits pretty hard on this. In the source material, specifically regarding his time in Bonn, in Germany, he describes this immense pressure to hyper-specialize, to publish or perish.
The classic academic trap.
Right. To focus on this tiny, tiny sliver of reality and ignore the big picture. He sees that as a kind of intellectual sterility. His writing, this blend of sci-fi and poetry, is what he calls an intellectual revolt. It's an insurrection against that sterility.
So he's a rebel physicist. He's inside the lab, but he's writing poetry on the whiteboard when no one is looking.
Or perhaps he's writing poetry with the whiteboard. He's using the symbols themselves as poetic elements.
Okay, let's test this theory, because it sounds nice in the abstract. Science is poetry. But I want to see if it actually holds up when we look at the work. Let's dive into the first book, Science and Poetry, from 2022.
Let's do it.
Before we even get to the words, we have to talk about the visuals. The sources mention these very specific illustrations, geometric shapes, polyhedra, hanging from strings.
Yes. And these are really key to the atmosphere. They're AI-generated images, but they are prompted based on classical geometry. They are very, very reminiscent of Leonardo da Vinci's illustrations for the Divine Proportion.
Right, the book by Luca Pacioli from 1509.
Exactly. And the Divine Proportion was the Renaissance attempt to find God in geometry, to find the perfect ratio, the golden mean in everything.
So Kuskun is doing something similar,
Yeah.
finding the divine in the math.
Yes and no. He uses these images of perfect solid geometric shapes, the platonic solids hanging in a void to represent the geometry of truth, the elegance of a mathematical proof. But, and here's the Kuskun twist, he contrasts them with the irrational ratios of nature.
Meaning that nature doesn't always fit the perfect shape.
Exactly. The math is perfect, the sphere is perfect, the polyhedron is perfect, but the world is messy. The world has friction, it has entropy, it has randomness. It's this beautiful visual symbolism of the perfect abstract math trying to contain or maybe just describe the messy, beautiful, decaying reality of the universe. The shape hangs from a string, but the string is frayed.
The ideal versus the real. I like that. Okay, let's get into the poems. There is one that really stood out to me in the notes, and I think it's a perfect place to start testing this whole idea of physics as poetry. It's called Poetry on the Event Horizon. In Turkish, Oleyuf Kundishur.
This is a beautiful, terrifying piece, one of my favorites.
So set the scene for us. Where are we? What's happening?
Okay, let's do a little theater of the mind here, just for a second. Imagine you are floating in the deepest, blackest space you can, and in front of you is a black hole. But not just any black hole. This is a Kerr black hole.
Quick refresher for those of us who didn't major in astrophysics. What makes a Kerr black hole special?
Spin. A tremendous amount of spin. Most people picture a black hole as a static dark pit, like a drain in a bathtub that's just sitting there. But a Kerr black hole is rotating. And it's rotating so fast with such immense mass that it literally drags the fabric of space-time along with it.
Twisting a bedsheet?
Exactly like twisting a bedsheet. Or imagine a spoon spinning in a jar of honey. The honey right next to the spoon gets pulled along, spinning with it. In this case, space-time is the honey. If you were floating near this thing, you wouldn't just fall in. You would be swept sideways, spun around by the geometry of space itself. This is a real effect called frame dragging. It's a violent, swirling vortex of pure geometry.
Okay, that is already terrifying.
Yeah.
We have this spinning maw of doom.
Yeah.
And who does Kuskun put there, at the edge of this abyss? A dervish.
A whirling dervish, which is just such a powerful, perfect juxtaposition.
It really is.
You have the whirling dervish, a symbol of Sufi mysticism, who is spinning to achieve a state of divine union, to disconnect from the earthly world and connect with God. And you have the black hole spinning due to the collapse of a massive star, which is physically disconnecting from the rest of the universe. Two kinds of transcendence, one mystical, one physical, both involving spinning.
And the poem talks about frozen time. This is a key theme.
Yes. And here is where the heart physics kicks in. Kuskun isn't just using frozen time as a poetic phrase like time stood still when I saw her. He means it literally. According to general relativity, if I'm watching you fall toward that event horizon from a safe distance, I never actually see you cross the line.
Why not? What do you see?
Because the gravity is so intense that it stretches the light waves coming from you. It's called gravitational redshift. And it also dilates time. So to me, looking from the outside, you slow down. You get slower and slower and slower. Your image gets dimmer and redder. And eventually you just freeze. You are plastered against the horizon for all of eternity, like a bug in amber.
So for the outside observer, the dervish just spins forever at the edge.
Yes. He becomes a permanent monument to that moment of transition. Kuskun calls it the universal law frozen in place. He's taking this terrifying relativistic effect where, from my perspective, you are effectively deleted from the universe's future and reframing it as the ultimate state of meditation, eternal presence. The dervish achieves his goal.
It completely changes how you look at the math. Usually time dilation is just a variable, $2. It's something you calculate to make sure the GPS satellites work. But here, he's saying time dilation is a state of grace.
Or a state of purgatory. That's the beauty of it. He leaves that ambiguity. It's the tension between the heaviness of time for the person falling in and the timelessness of light for the person watching.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. The physics isn't just the setting. The physics is the metaphor.
Yeah.
The equation itself is the source of the feeling.
Exactly. The equation is the stanza.
Let's look at another one. This one feels a bit more playful, but also maybe a bit more mind-bending. Maxwell is confused. Maxwell Shuskin.
Poor Maxwell. I love this one.
James Clerk Maxwell, the father of electromagnetism, the guy who gave us the equations that make literally all of our modern technology, radio, TV, internet, all of it possible. Why is he confused?
He's confused because Kuskun is introducing him to the future of his own field. He's time-traveling Maxwell into the weirdness of quantum mechanics.
How's he do that?
The poem brings in quantum interpretations that challenge the classical linear view of time. It references Kramer. Now that refers to John Kramer, a physicist who proposed something called the transactional interpretation of quantum mechanics.
Okay, transactional interpretation sounds like something I do at the banks. Let's unpack that.
It's a bit strange, but bear with me. In standard quantum mechanics, a particle emits a wave that goes forward in time. Simple enough. But Kramer suggested that quantum interactions involve a kind of handshake through time.
A handshake.
Yes. The emitter sends a wave forward in time. He called it an offer wave. But the absorber, the thing the particle eventually hits, sends a wave backwards in time. An echo wave or confirmation wave.
Whoa, hold on. Backwards in time.
Yes. Retarded waves and advanced waves. They meet in the middle in space-time, they shake hands, and the transaction is complete. That handshake is the quantum event. The particle is transferred.
So the future influences the past. The effect comes before the cause, in a way.
In that interpretation, yes. And the poem just has so much fun with this. It says, time symmetry isn't broken here. The future sends a message back. It imagines Maxwell, who gave us the classical straight-arrow equations of light, just sitting at his desk in the 1800s, and suddenly getting these ripples, these waves, hitting him from the future.
I love the image of Maxwell sitting at his desk, with his quill pen, and suddenly getting a nudge from 2026, a little hint about quantum field theory.
It's the poetic idea that time isn't a straight line, it's a conversation, it's a loop. And what's brilliant is that Kuskun is respecting the math here. Kramer's interpretation is a valid, mathematically sound way to look at quantum mechanics. It's not pseudoscience, it's just profoundly weird.
It's weird, but it's beautiful. It implies we aren't just pushing into the future is pulling us, reaching back.
Exactly, it reframes causality.
There's another poem that seems to have a bit of that rebel spirit we talked about earlier. It's called Group Theory. Now, group theory is a branch of pure mathematics, right?
A very abstract, very powerful branch of mathematics, yes. At its heart, it's the study of symmetry.
And it's important for physics.
It's fundamental. It is the backbone of the standard model of particle physics. If you want to understand how fundamental particles interact, quarks, leptons, bosons, you use group theory. It's all based on these mathematical symmetry groups.
But Kuskun doesn't seem to be a fan in this poem. The source says he calls it a curse tool.
He describes it as a cursed tool used by the tyrant physicist to imprison nature.
The tyrant physicist. That is vivid. It sounds like a villain in a Marvel movie. Dr. Symmetry.
It goes back to that tension we saw in the illustrations between the perfect polyhedra and messy nature. The poem asks, does the math describe nature, or does it trap it? If you force the universe to fit into a perfect mathematical group like SU3 or SU2, are you really seeing the universe, or are you just seeing the cage you built for it?
Wait, I have to push back here. The math works. The Standard Model is the most successful scientific theory in history. We found the Higgs boson because the group theory predicted it. The cage seems to fit the bird pretty perfectly.
It fits the bird so far. But Kuskun is asking the heretical question. What about the parts of the bird that don't fit? What about the messy feathers? Are we ignoring them because they don't fit our beautiful symmetries?
So things like dark matter or dark energy.
Exactly. Or the measurement problem in quantum mechanics. Or consciousness. He's warning us against falling in love with the elegance of the cage and forgetting the wildness of the bird. He's saying that maybe, just maybe, the universe is fundamentally more wild and less symmetric than our current theories allow. It's a critique of mathematical hubris.
Speaking of wild particles and cages, we have to talk about Mr. Zizim, Bey Zizim.
Yes. This is a fascinating little character study.
But the character isn't a human. The outline speculates, but who do we think Mr. Zizim is?
The text leaves it a bit open, but based on the context of decay, vanishing, and the name Zizim, it strongly implies a personification of the Z boson.
The Z boson. Okay, for the listener. This is one of the particles that carries the weak nuclear force. It's responsible for certain types of radioactive decay.
Correct. And the thing about the Z boson is that it is incredibly heavy for a particle, and because of that, it is incredibly unstable. It pops into existence and decays almost instantly.
How instantly?
We're talking on the order of 10 to the minus 25 seconds. 10 to the minus 25.
That is, I can't even comprehend how short that is. It's a very short life.
It's barely a life. It's a blip. It's a flicker. And the poem takes this physical fact and imbues it with pathos. It asks, from Mr. Zizim's perspective, is this the right time to get lost? It turns that instantaneous decay into an existential crisis. Imagine being a conscious entity that exists only to vanish. The poem explores the beauty and the terror of that disappearing. It asks if there is a right time to fade into the void. Is there a choice? Is there a moment of decision in that impossibly short lifespan?
It takes subatomic decay and makes it a story about mortality, about the fear of death, or maybe the purpose of it.
Or the acceptance of it. Mr. Zizim knows his job is to vanish. Without his vanishing, the interaction doesn't happen. The decay doesn't occur. His death is the mechanism of the universe. It's a purpose-driven death.
That is surprisingly touching for a poem about a boson. I never thought I'd feel empathy for a fundamental particle.
That's Kuskun's magic, isn't it? He creates empathy for the quantum realm. He makes you care about the fate of a particle that lives for less than a trillionth of a second.
One more from this first book before we move on to the sequel, the missing chapter. Kitapyurdu. The source says there's a 14th chapter that is missing from a book.
Yes, and this is a very philosophical, almost Zen-like piece. The poem describes a master and an apprentice. The apprentice cries because the chapter's missing. He wants the answer key. He wants the complete text. He sees emptiness and thinks it's a mistake, a flaw.
Where's the rest of the book? How can I understand if it's not all here?
Exactly. But the master, and in Kuskun's work, the master is often a stand-in for the enlightened observer or the mature scientist. He knows that emptiness is not nothingness.
Emptiness is not nothingness. That sounds like a lesson on quantum vacuum fluctuations.
It is. That's the physics layer. In quantum field theory, a vacuum isn't empty. It's not nothing. It's seething with potential, with virtual particles popping in and out of existence. The void is actually the most alive thing there is, but it's also a philosophical point.
What's the philosophical layer?
That a complete mind might actually require missing pieces. The unknown is just as important as the known. The gap in the book is the lesson. The questions are more important than the answers.
I like that. The blank page is part of the story. If you knew everything, the story would be over. There'd be nothing left to discover.
Exactly. Physics needs the mystery. If we solved the theory of everything tomorrow, what would we do the day after? What would be the point? The search is the purpose.
We'd probably just go fishing.
Which brings us perfectly to the next book.
Indeed. So we spent the first half of this deep dive floating in the abstract void. We've looked at black holes, decaying bosons, and the cages of group theory. It's fascinating, but it's also a bit cold. It's lonely out there in the high math conceptual space.
It is, and I think Kuskun felt that chill too. Because in the sequel, Magnetic Monopole Dreams in Blue Anatolian Nights, he does something radical. He crashes the ship.
He comes back to Earth.
Specifically, he comes back to soil, to the olive trees, to the Mediterranean Sea. The blue in the title is a very specific cultural and historical reference to Blue Anatolia.
It feels like a landing. We go from the universal law at the event horizon to a specific place, Anatolia. Why that specific spot? Is it just because he's Turkish?
That's certainly part of the personal connection, but it's much more about the intellectual soil of that region. He's taking us to the Ionian coast, modern-day Western Turkey. This is where Western philosophy and science were born.
The pre-Socratics.
The Milesian school. Thales and Anaximander and Anaximenes, and others from that tradition like Heraclitus and, crucially, Empedocles. Kuskun is arguing that Modern physics has lost its way, and to find it again, we need to revive the Milesian spirit.
What is that spirit exactly? What do they have that we've lost?
It's the spirit of unity. These thinkers didn't separate science from poetry or philosophy from natural observation. They saw it all as one single pursuit of truth. Thales looked at water and saw the arch, the fundamental substance of reality. In the book, Kuskun has a poem called Water Master, Su Eustadia, which is a direct homage to Thales.
And didn't Empedocles write everything in verse? His scientific theories were epic poems.
He did. This is a key connection. Empedocles is a huge figure for this project. He wrote a poem called On Nature. He proposed the four roots, earth, air, fire, water, and said they were moved by two fundamental forces, love and strife.
Love and strife. It sounds like a romance novel, not a physics textbook.
But think about it for a second. What is love? It's an attractive force. It brings things together. What is strife? It's a repulsive force. It pushes things apart.
So, gravity and electromagnetism versus entropy and the weak force.
It's a poetic precursor. Empedocles was doing physics, but he was using the language of human emotion and myth to describe the cosmos. Kuskun is channeling that directly. He's saying, let's go back to Ionia, let's sit under an olive tree, look at the stars, and do the math, but let's feel the love and the strife while we do it. He wants to restore that holistic worldview.
It's a very romantic, almost pastoral image.
Yeah.
But there's still some hard modern physics right there in the title. Huh? Magnetic monopole dreams.
Oh, yes. The magnetic monopole. One of my favorite hypothetical particles.
Explain this to me, because I know magnets.
Yeah.
You've got a North Pole and a South Pole. End of story.
Always. If you take a simple bar magnet and cut it in half, you don't get a separate north piece and a south piece. You just get two smaller magnets, each with its own north and south pole. You can keep cutting forever, right down to the electron, and you always have dipoles, two poles.
Right.
But the math, specifically Paul Dirac's work in the 1930s, and later the grand unified theories, says that there should be elementary particles with only one pole. Just a north, or just a south, a magnetic monopole.
Should be, but have we found one?
Never. Not a single one confirmed. We have been looking for decades. There was a famous, tantalizing event in 1982 at Stanford physicist Blas Cabrera thought he found one. It's called the Valentine's Day monopole. But the result was never replicated. It is the holy grail of particle physics.
So it's a particle that theoretically should exist, our best theories predict it, but it's completely alone. It's missing.
And that is the metaphor Kuskun seizes upon. It represents cosmic solitude. Imagine being the only monopole in a universe of dipoles. Everyone else has a partner. Everyone else has a complement, an opposite. You are the only singularity of your kind.
That is a profoundly lonely image. It's heartbreaking.
It's the ultimate outsider. It's the unique, singular dream waiting to be discovered. Kuskun takes this hypothetical particle, this deep physics mystery, and places it in the blue Anatolian night. It's the physicist as a lonely dreamer, searching the dark for the one truth that will complete the picture.
I want to circle back to something you dropped earlier, because it sounded like the plot of a sci-fi movie that I desperately want to see. The Rose Postulate. The outline says it combines topology, neuroscience, and physics.
This is one of the denser, more speculative parts of his work, but it might be the most important. The Rose Postulate is presented as this daring postulate, a kind of manifesto within the book. And yes, it aims to weave together three massive fields.
Okay, let's break that down. Topology first.
Topology is the branch of mathematics that studies the properties of shapes that are preserved under continuous deformation, stretching, twisting, but not tearing. The classic example is that a donut and a coffee cup are topologically the same because they both have one hole.
Right. The hole for the coffee and the hole in the donut.
Precisely. So that's the shape part. Then you have neuroscience, which is the study of how neurons connect and form networks in the brain. And finally, physics, specifically cosmology and quantum field theory, which describe the shape and structure of space-time itself.
So he's saying the shape of the universe and the shape of our brain networks are related. Is this the old microcosm, macrocosm idea? That a picture of a galaxy looks like a picture of a neuron?
It starts there with that visual intuition, but it goes much deeper into the mathematical structure. Kuskun seems to be asking, do the networks of the human mind follow the same fundamental topological rules as the fabric of space-time? Are there universal principles of connection and structure that apply to both mind and matter?
Whoa. Okay, let's just chew on that for a second. If the answer is yes, what does that mean for us?
It would be paradigm shifting. It would mean that thinking isn't just a biological process happening inside your skull. It would mean that when you have a thought, a genuine insight. You are literally mirroring the geometry of the universe. Your mind is resonating with the cosmos.
And this ties back to his manifesto against the post-truth era.
It does, in a very clever way. If our minds are geometrically linked to reality, then truth isn't subjective. It's not just a matter of opinion. Truth has a shape. Truth is a specific topological structure that is stable and consistent.
So if you lie, or if you deny reality,
You aren't just being wrong. In this model, you are creating a topological defect in your own consciousness. You are tying a knot in your mind that doesn't belong there, a knot that contorts the natural geometry. It suggests that aligning yourself with the truth is literally aligning the structure of your mind with the structure of the universe.
that takes follow the science to an almost spiritual level. It's not just a good idea, it's a matter of mental cosmic alignment.
And this is why he calls it a manifesto. He's arming the reader with a new way to think about truth. He's saying, your mind is not an island. It is built to understand this universe. Don't let the noise and disinformation of the modern world break that fundamental geometry.
You know, as we talk about these two books, I'm realizing this isn't just a collection of poems. There's a narrative here. It feels like he's building a single, cohesive universe across all his works.
That is where it gets really interesting for dedicated readers. If you just read one poem, you might miss it. But Kuzgun is building what I'd call a cosmic Ouroboros.
The snake eating its own tail. The cycle.
The cycle, the interconnectedness. The sources are clear that these poetry books link directly to his sci-fi novels, like Kusur, which means the defect, and Işık Getiren, the light bringer. And he publishes poems in yearly Bilim Kurgu Yükseliyor, which is a monthly Turkish sci-fi magazine. He sees the poems and the stories as two sides of the same coin.
There's this recurring character or concept that comes up called Uglat.
Uglat, yes. The summary in the notes describes it as a cipher within time and space, a prisoner. It seems to represent a trapped consciousness, a glitch in reality.
A glitch, like in The Matrix.
Similar vibes, but more metaphysical, less technological. There's a poem mentioned called The Crack, Catlak. It describes a crack in the tree of life where ink flows.
Ooh, I love that image.
It's powerful, isn't it? It suggests that our reality is not a seamless whole. It's fractured, it has cracks. And poetry, the ink, is the stuff that leaks through from somewhere else. It connects to the Lightbringers mentioned in his other books, these beings who tell never-ending stories to thousands of different realms.
It sounds like he's building a mythology where the physicist is the hero, but not because he solves the final equation.
No, the physicist is the hero because he's the one who first notices the mind prison. There's a recurring theme of the prisoner of dreams, Düşler Mahkumu. The protagonist is often a dervish, a wanderer, a scientist at the edge of the cosmos. It suggests that the modern physicist, staring into the data from a particle collider, is the modern equivalent of the mystic staring into the fire.
They're both looking for the architecture of reality.
Exactly. And they both run the risk of realizing that they themselves are trapped inside that architecture. Or worse, that the trap is of their own making, a product of their own limited perception. The classic is the below like the above, from Hermetic philosophy.
Let's zoom out a bit. We've been very deep in the text, but who is reading this? Kuzgun isn't just writing for himself in a dark room.
No, he's actually quite active in the global dialogue. We mentioned he translates Richard Feynman comics into Turkish.
Which is a public service in itself. Feynman is the ultimate communicator physicist, the patron saint of making physics fun.
Absolutely. Feynman played bongos and painted and cracked safes at Los Alamos. He embodied the joy and playfulness of physics. Kuzgun clearly models some of his approach on Feynman, but Kuzgun's own work is crossing borders too. Science and poetry includes English sections, and he's been published in the anthology of Turkish science fiction stories in the UK.
There was a specific work mentioned in that anthology, Trojan 137.
Trojan 137. This is just a brilliant title. It perfectly fuses mythology, Troy, the Trojan horse, with fundamental physics. The number 137.
Okay, hit me. What is 137? I see it on T-shirts at science conventions and on license plates in sci-fi movies, but I never knew exactly what it meant.
It is the magic number of physics. It's the inverse of the fine structure constant, roughly 11,137. It's a pure number that governs the strength of the electromagnetic interaction. It tells us how strongly light and matter couple together.
Why is it magic?
Because it is a pure dimensionless number. It's not 137 meters or 137 seconds. It's just 137. And nobody knows where it comes from. Physicists have been obsessed with it for a century. Wolfgang Pauli, Feynman, Eddington, they all wondered, why this number? Why not 138? Why not 42? If it were even slightly different, stable atoms wouldn't form. Life as we know it wouldn't exist.
So Trojan 137 implies
What?
a mathematical horse smuggling something secret into our reality.
Knowing Kuskun, that's exactly what it implies. It suggests that the fundamental constants of nature might not just be numbers. They might be hiding a secret history, a message, just like the wooden horse hid the Greek soldiers. It implies that inside the laws of physics, there is a hidden army of meaning waiting to burst out.
Why do you think this kind of work, this blend of high science and high poetry, is resonating right now? Why does it deserve international attention?
I think we are experiencing a global crisis of meaning. We have more data than ever before in human history. We have actual images of black holes. We have found the Higgs boson. We have mapped a human genome. But I think many people feel less connected to the universe than the Ionians did 2,500 years ago.
We have the logos, the logic, but we lost the fusio. We lost the felt connection to nature.
We lost the unity. The biologist E.O. Wilson called for a consilience, the unity of knowledge. Kuskun's work hits that cultural zeitgeist perfectly. People are hungry for it. They want to feel the awe of physics without needing a PhD in string theory. But, and this is the important part, they don't want fluff. They don't want bad New Age interpretations of quantum mechanics.
Right. They don't want someone telling them that quantum entanglement means they can telepathically talk to their cat from another city.
Exactly. Kuskun respects the math. He has the credentials. When he writes about time symmetry and Maxwell is confused, he's being accurate to a valid physical theory. He offers a shortcut to the awe, but he doesn't break the laws of physics to do it. He finds the poetry that's already there in the equations.
That's a tough balance beam to walk, to be both rigorous and lyrical.
It is. But he seems to walk it with the grace of that dervish on the event horizon.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to talk about the instructions for the listener, for the reader. The source material mentions that Kuskun often includes a note to the reader style in his work.
Yes, and it's very deliberate. He doesn't give you answers on a silver platter. He explicitly says he gives fragments. He invites the reader to complete the equation, to connect the dots. It's participatory. He wants you to think, to feel, to dream alongside him.
And there's one final concept from the poems I want to touch on because it's so beautifully strange. Phosphinia.
Ah, Phosphinia.
From phosphenes. I know what phosphines are. It's the light you see when you rub your eyes too hard in a dark room with little sparks and swirls of color.
Right. It's an illusion of light caused by mechanical pressure on the retina. It's a biological glitch. It's fake light. But Kuskun, in his classic style, takes that biological glitch and turns it into a profound cosmological question.
Which is?
Is consciousness itself just a kind of phosphine? Is it just pressure on matter? Is the light of awareness we all experience, the reality we perceive, just the universe rubbing its eyes? Or, and this is the twist, is it the light manipulating us? Are we just the biological medium for the phosphines?
That is slightly terrifying. That our entire inner world might be a byproduct, an illusion.
The poem goes even further. It asks if protons and neutrons are conscious, if the fundamental building blocks of matter feel that pressure. If the pressure of simply existing is what creates the light of consciousness.
So what does this all mean? Where does he leave us?
He leaves us with the feeling that we might be asking the wrong questions, or perhaps asking them in the wrong language. We've been using the language of prose and equations, the logos. Maybe we need to relearn the language of myth and metaphor, the mitos.
I keep going back to that image from the sequel of the Ionian Institute of Physics. I'm picturing a modern glass building, with clean rooms and particle accelerators, but sitting in an ancient olive grove in Western Anatolia.
It's a beautiful dream, isn't it? A synthesis of the ancient and the modern.
And I just have to ask this final question. If we started teaching physics there, not in a cold lecture hall with fluorescent lights, but under the stars, reading poems about magnetic monopoles and the dreams of Z bosons, would we find the answers we've been missing?
Perhaps the missing chapter isn't a lost formula. Perhaps it's the poetic spirit we abandoned when we decided that equations shouldn't sing. Perhaps Empedocles was right all along. It's love and strife all the way down.
That is a thought to chew on for a long time. We've covered a lot of ground today. We went from the freezing time of a black hole to the warm nights of the Mediterranean. We met dervishes, confused physicists, lonely magnetic monopoles, and the ghost of Empedocles.
And we learned that maybe, just maybe, the universe is a poem that wrote itself, and we're just now learning how to read it.
If you're listening to this, I encourage you to look for the cracks in your own reality, the places where the math seems to end and the dream begins. And hey, if you ever find a magnetic monopole, please let us know. You'll definitely win a Nobel Prize.
And you'll cure the cosmic loneliness.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.